Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to share a poem with you, and you can find it if you take out your Hakol on the second page. The poem appears in an exhibit called Kindertransport, Rescuing Children on the Brink of War, that is currently on display at the American-Swedish Institute. Let me give you a bit of background before I have you look at the poem. Kindertransport is the remarkable story of the effort to save children from Europe as the Nazis began their reign of terror. It's the story of parents who faced the agonizing decision to put their children on a train, likely never to see them again, hoping that they would survive, and finding themselves taken by train a short time later to the gas chambers of Auschwitz. It's the story of children whisked away from their parents to a foreign land, not knowing the language or the culture, taken in by strangers and forced to begin life anew. It's the story of Jews and Gentiles who welcomed scared children into their homes and into their hearts for an unspecified length of time, and of raising children not their own. Beginning in 1938, 10,000 kinder were rescued and brought to safety to England and Sweden, Palestine, and America. One of them was named Siegfried Lindenbaum, who at 9 years old, and together with his 7-year-old brother Manfred, traveled from Poland to England. They arrived only 3 days before the Nazis invaded Poland. Their sister would not make it out of Europe alive. Lindenbaum eventually moved to the United States, where he started a family and became a world-renowned scientist based out of the University of Kansas. His daughter, some of whom you know, Beth Gendler, shared her father's story as part of the Kindertransport exhibit, which is sponsored by the American-Swedish Institute, the JCRC, and our own Bethel Synagogue through the generosity of the Rivel and Phil Greenberg Family Fund for Holocaust Awareness. Reflecting back on his life in 1991, Lindenbaum penned this poem. What if I were asked those questions? Where are you from? What are you? I'm from Germany, but I'm not German. I'm also from England, but I'm not British. I'm also from Tennessee, but I'm not a Tennessean. My home is in Kansas, but am I a Kansan? Perhaps. I was displaced, unsettled, not yet settled, never settled. Where are you from? Who are you? What are you? I am a Jew, displaced, unsettled, not yet settled, never settled, wandering, wondering. I'm very moved by this poem, and I want to invite you to take just a moment to digest it. Read it again to yourself. What do you think the author means at the end when he says that he is a wandering, wondering Jew? What is he wondering about? Where is home? When will I feel settled? Why the Jews? Why me? Why did I survive? I'm particularly struck by that last line, wandering, wondering. And I bring it to your attention this morning because I believe that it captures something core to Jewish identity. We have been, and I would argue, we are called upon to be a wandering, wondering people. God forbid, not for the reasons that Siegfried wandered and wondered, but rather wander and wonder in the footsteps of Abraham and Sarah. Siegfried, in this poem, asks all kinds of questions. This morning, we're introduced to the first Jew And it is an opportune time to ask maybe a different set of questions. Not what are you, but what makes you who you are. Not who are you, but why are you? Why did God call to you in the first place? Not where are you from, but to where are you going? At the outset of our parsha, Abraham and Sarah were called by God, Lech Lecha, to leave their homeland, to leave their birthplace, to make their way to a place they did not know, and there to settle and start a family. Of course, no sooner had they arrived in Canaan when a famine struck the land. And so Abraham and Sarah, they packed their bags, and again they wandered down to Egypt. Skip ahead to Abraham's grandson, Jacob. Now, Jacob was living back in Canaan when once again a famine struck the land. And once again, he took his now large family and again went down to Egypt. It's that story that we recall every year around the Passover table when we read, "My father Jacob was a wandering Aramaean who went down to Egypt with a meager number, but there became a mighty nation." The story of Abraham and Jacob would be played out generation after generation, settled, unsettled, not yet settled. Of course, there is an important difference that must be made between some of these stories, because while Abraham and Sarah willingly left their homeland and headed towards a promised land, like my grandparents, great-grandparents who left Russia in search of the Golden Medina, or like early Zionists who went to Israel to reestablish a state for the Jewish people. By contrast, though, Siegfried and other kinder were forced from their homes. Like Jews before them who fled Israel in the year 70, in Spain in 1492, in England in 1248, and the Pale of settlements in the 19th century, they fled for their lives. Abraham wandered toward, Siegfried escaped from. Over the millennia, we have been a wandering people. At times, this has been our ill fate, but at other times, our good fortune. Let me explain. To be a wandering Jew could be a curse. It creates, as we see in the poem, a sense of being unsettled, of being a stranger, of being an outsider. But under the right circumstances, wandering can be wonderful. Who hasn't felt a certain Wanderlust, a desire just to get up and go this past year? And let's admit that as much as we would have liked to have been permanently settled, it's wandering actually that saved us. We found somewhere else to go. We left Germany and we went to England. We left Poland and went to America. We left Spain and went to Italy, Morocco, and went to Israel, and on and on. We learned and we grew in each new place and from each new people. And it's not just that wandering saved us, it taught us. It taught us a central Jewish value, care for the stranger. In our parsha, Abraham experiences that famine and he heads to Egypt, Lagur Sham, to dwell there as a temporary resident, as a resident alien without legal rights or protections. Later, Abraham is told that his descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. Ki ger zaracha be'eretz lo lahem. They will wander to the corners of the earth, settled, never settled. And having experienced homelessness and exile, having tasted isolation and segregation, we are told to hold on to those feelings, that they might inspire in us compassion, to raise in us awareness. You see, we turned our curse into a charge, into the Torah's most often repeated commandment. Do not oppress the stranger, welcome the stranger, love the stranger, for you were strangers in a strange land. That of wandering. But what about wondering? For Siegfried, wondering was the result of uncertainty and fear. It was having no answers to the most elementary questions. Where are you from? Who are you? What are you? It is wondering, but not knowing. But there is another kind of wondering. Why is it that Abraham was chosen to be the father of a new nation? According to the Midrash, Abraham looked out unto the heavens. He gazed at the stars of the sky and he wondered, who created all of this? Who designed, who fashioned this world? It must be none other than the creator of the heavens and the earth. Rather than an indication of insecurity, wonder can be born out of curiosity, the result of openness. 20th century philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel was another wandering, wondering Jew. He taught that wonder is the first step on the journey of faith. Wonder comes, he said, from noticing something so obvious that we usually completely overlook it. That is, there is something rather than nothing. Now, it's understandable why we fail to notice this, because life is routine, and routine is resistant to wonder. It is the crucial task of religion, Heschel taught, and this is difficult to listen. It's the crucial task of religion to struggle against the anesthetizing effect of our over-familiarization with life and instill in us a perpetual sense of surprise. That is to say, our first response to the world, to this gift of life, should be wonder. But understand that wonder, it's not just about aesthetic enjoyment. Oh, this is so wonderful. Rather, Heschel says, wonder poses a question. It calls for a response. As Heschel writes, it's not the feeling of wonder that is at the root of religion, but rather the question, what do I do with that feeling of wonder? When human beings approach the world with wonder, we cannot help but ask, how shall I ever reciprocate for breathing, for thinking, for sight and for hearing, for love and for achievement? In other words, for Heschel, wonder leads to a sense of indebtedness. You see, too often our life is focused on owning when it should be about owing. Instead, we are to say, I did nothing to deserve this world. How can I repay the gift? Wandering and wondering. It would be understandable if our wondering left us bitter and lonely, and at times it has. And we shouldn't be so naive to think that as Jews, our wandering and wondering, our displacement, our not yet settled, never settled, has come to an end, not even in America. But under the right circumstances, wandering and wondering can teach us compassion, fill us with gratitude, awaken our sensitivity and awaken our souls, and motivate us to pursue justice and righteousness and inspire our own journey to the promised land. Chaverim, when we arise and proudly proclaim, despite it all, I am a Jew, we can transform our curse into our charge. Then we become a great nation with a great name. From Siegfried, a lesson. From Abraham, a mission. And you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lefilach. Shabbat shalom.